So yesterday we left off with the Pacific Theater of War, and this is where a lot of the fighting actually took place. So we're gonna go through this. There's a bunch of videos here that you should probably go watch on your own. They'll look better than if I try to show them to you. So just heads up. Here you go. In early 1942, the Japanese Empire was growing rapidly. The Japanese took over massive amounts of territory, island by island. The U.S. and Filipino soldiers that surrendered to the Japanese on May 6, 1942, in Bataan had no idea how vicious the Japanese actually were. Part of the reason that the Japanese were so violent was something called the Bushido Code. And so basically, if you go back to the time of the samurai, this idea of death before dishonor, this idea that you would never surrender, it shows up when the Japanese soldiers are taking prisoners. They think these people are cowards. They think these people deserve to be treated like less than human. And there's a really good book that you'll read in 8th grade, and then you've probably seen the movie. It's called Unbroken, that sort of depicts one experience of Louis Zamperini, a famous Olympian, and how he was treated by Japanese soldiers. And so it sort of gives you a sense of the brutality. This year is General MacArthur. He's in charge of running the sort of like the Pacific Theater of War for the United States. He's very famous for that cobcorn pipe and for the aviators. So he'll be pretty important in the Korean War as well. If you look, you can see this is the territory that the Japanese have taken over. So Japan is this set of islands right here. And they've gone and they've taken over Korea and a huge chunk of China. They've taken over Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia, Guadalcanal, all these little places here, Papua New Guinea, whatever they are. So all these different islands. And then down here you have Australia. So this is sort of going to be the jumping off point for the Allies. The Coral Sea, northeast of Australia, was the site of the first battle between the Japanese and American aircraft carriers. The battle was essentially a draw, but it marked the first time that the Japanese had failed to take over a target. So they had been expanding and expanding and expanding, and finally the United States and the other allies were able to push back, and it was the first time that it looked like they might have some competition in the Pacific. The Bataan Death March. Captured U.S. and Filipino soldiers were forced to march 60 miles, occasionally being beaten and tortured by Japanese soldiers. This was just a super disgusting, brutal sort of display of violence against prisoners of war. Usually in war, you're not allowed to capture prisoners of war and assault them or attack them in any way. It's against the Geneva Convention and the rules of war. But the Japanese had ignored those. You can see here's a map from the textbook, and you can sort of get the idea for the Allied response. They're going to be coming in 1943 and pushing in from the south and taking over as many lands as they can as they push closer and closer to mainland Japan. The closer they get to mainland Japan, the harder and harder it will be to fight against them. From the north, you have the Soviets coming into Manchuria and Mongolia, and so everyone is racing to see who can get to Japan. This is a very famous photograph right here. If you look, this is the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. And this is a moment that's become famous, and they've turned it into a statue in Washington, D.C. What's actually really interesting about this is they raised the American flag once, and then a photographer wanted to recapture the moment, and so they did it again for the photographer. And that photo sort of went viral around the world. Some of the fiercest fighting took place as the Japanese were dug into these islands, and so the Americans would go island by island to try to clear them out. In 1942, the Japanese attempted to take a crucial U.S. military base located on the island of Midway. There's a really interesting movie coming out this summer, I believe, called Midway. That's all about it. The Japanese were hoping to take the island and lure the U.S. into a decisive battle. The Americans had cracked the Japanese codes and were able to know the exact time and location of their attack. So with this information, Admiral Chester Nimitz, a guy who now we name a bunch of aircraft carriers after, he was able to prepare and launch a counterattack that destroyed 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. So the Japanese thought they were going to catch us and basically ambush us, and then we surprised them, and they didn't know it was coming. And so it was a huge victory for the United States. The Allies began hopping from island to island on a long crusade towards the Japanese mainland. The U.S. skipped over the more fortified Japanese islands and took over the easier targets first. This helped the United States create a network of bases, and it hurt the Japanese by cutting off their supply lines. Hang on. Oh, and just so you know, there's a definition down here, island hopping. It's when you're pushing the Japanese back island by island, getting closer to the Japanese homeland. Sometimes you'll hear that in videos, and yeah, good to know. Let's see here. There we go. Battles were extremely hard fought in the Pacific. One example was the Battle of Guadalcanal, which lasted for 6 months until the Japanese surrendered the island. It was one of the most famous battles. Also, a famous battle was the Battle of Iwo Jima, which I showed you that image of earlier. In only 1 month of fighting, almost 7,000 Americans died. The Japanese lost around 20,000 people before they surrendered the island. There's a really interesting movie that if you haven't seen it, you would definitely love. It's called Hacksaw Ridge. It's about sort of like the fighting in the Pacific, and I believe one of the islands they fight on is Iwo Jima. I think that's right. Yeah. And there's that photograph. As the United States got closer to Japan, more bombings of Japanese cities took place. Cities like Tokyo were firebombed over and over. So the Japanese had built a lot of their buildings out of bamboo and wood, and so it made them highly flammable. So the United States and the Allies would fly over Japan and drop these firebombs, and before you know it, they could set basically these entire cities on fire and just melt them to the ground. They got so hot that the glass in the windows in the cities would melt. Like, it was just extremely, extremely hot. The United States reached the island of Okinawa, which is at the southern tip of Japan, in April of 1945. It was just 350 miles from Japan's mainland, which is Honshu. The closer the Americans came to Japan, the harder the Japanese people fought back. The Americans lost 12,000 men, with many more injured. The Japanese lost well over 100,000 soldiers. The Japanese military made Okinawa their last stand effort. They employed a tactic used throughout the war, which was known as kamikaze. Soldiers would commit suicide in various ways to try and prevent their enemies from winning. They would kill their enemies. So in some situations, pilots would smash their planes into U.S. ships. That was a form of kamikaze. There were also soldiers, like at Okinawa, who would strap bombs to themselves and then run at American tanks and explode. And that was a form of kamikaze as well. Pilots were now being used basically as suicide bombers as soon as they ran out of ammunition. These Japanese pilots, they were bolted into their planes, so there was no way to eject, there was no way out. It was to guarantee that they were going to do the last great sacrifice for their country and kill themselves for the emperor. Here's a really good video. You can watch it on your own time. It's of a kamikaze bomber. President Roosevelt dies during his third term, making Harry S. Truman the new acting president. What's really interesting about that is Truman takes over, and FDR had actually been elected 4 times. He's the only president ever in American history to win 4 presidential elections. Before he can be sworn in the 4th time, he dies. And so Truman, who's kind of this vice president who FDR doesn't really love, he's kind of just there to sort of like boost his votes a little bit, he's now taking over. Truman learns about a top secret project called the Manhattan Project, which was charged with developing a new weapon, the atomic bomb. On August 6th, 1945, Truman ordered the bomb to be dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, and on August 9th, he ordered the bomb to be dropped on Nagasaki, Japan. In total, 250,000 Japanese citizens died. The lucky ones died during the blast. The less fortunate suffered extreme radiation poisoning and were forced to wait in hospitals as their bodies slowly fell apart. One of the really disgusting things that can happen with radiation poisoning is that your skin can sort of start to fall off. And so just like how fried chicken sort of comes off of, or the skin on fried chicken can sort of just be peeled off, that's what was happening to these people as they were suffering extreme radiation poisoning. You can see the bombs were very effective. They just destroyed everything in their path. There's a really good movie that I wanted to show you. It's on Netflix, and it is called Graveyard of the Fireflies, I believe. And so, or it's not on Netflix, it's on Hulu rather. So if you have Hulu, you could check that out in the original Japanese. It gives you a really interesting perspective of the Japanese citizens. So yeah. And last thing, just a little thought experiment, and you can leave a comment in the Google Classroom or wherever. Do you believe that Truman was justified in dropping the atomic bomb? Do you believe that it was the right thing to do morally? Why or why not? Write a quick paragraph, 4 sentences, something like that, outlining your thoughts on Truman's use of the atomic bomb. Okay. So that's basically the notes for the Pacific half of World War II. It's pretty interesting, I think. There's a lot of really good films and videos and movies and stuff that I want to show you, but unfortunately, because we're not in class, we can't really do that. What I am going to do is, for tomorrow, there's a really nice movie that I found on YouTube. It's from the History Channel, and it's called World War II from Space. I have the DVD, so it's like really, really sharp, but this is a lower resolution version. It'll show you big picture stuff about World War II. And so if you're a history fan at all, or if you're interested in World War II at all, it'll really give you some good insight. Anyways, I hope everybody is doing well. If you have any questions, make sure to email me. Make sure to get me on Remind. You can comment in the Google Classroom and let me know if there's any problems, anything like that. Yep. Hope you're all doing well.